So there was, I guess, there is a calculator project and all these kind of there. So uh, like those are like easy one, right? I hope there's no difficulty in that part.
Yes.
All right. Okay. So what we are going to cover today is basically, since we started the closer part last day, and that is being a very important topic in JavaScript. So we'll be continuing with that part. We'll be studying binding today. Okay, what is binding? How this works in JavaScript and things related to it, like things related to functions and all those things. Okay. All right. So let me check it. So just a minute, and we can begin. If someone joins, otherwise we'll begin.
मनीष के पास है मनीष के पास मनीष के पास है जी जी
All right. I guess we can begin. I will share my screen.
जी
Okay. All right. So closure was the last thing we discussed. We discussed that if there are nested functions, how do they behave, and we have some local variables in the function, and we have local variable in the outer function, and we saw that how the scope is preserved, even though the function call is done. Closure inlet we saw, where in a for loop we saw. Okay. Then we did a bit of discussion of arrow function. So let's start with the arrow function thing. Okay. And then we'll move to binding, then this keyword, and like finally to call apply and bind. All right. So before that, is there any topic from like before this DOM or anything you want me to like revise timing function on all, or should we move forward?
So move forward.
All right. So okay,
सर
let's begin with
जी सर
the arrow function then. All right, just a second. I will open the code part.
जी जी सर ठीक है सर
All right, let
जी
me check. Do we have arrow function over here,
सर
or else we can start with arrow function thing. So okay, we have the arrow function over here. Now we discussed
जी
that arrow function basically behaves something like this. That if you have a single line, single argument function, so this is how it looks. Okay. Also, if there's a single line and we do not need to give the curly braces over here, also, and we do not need to put a return keyword over here. Okay. If we so returned is determined whatever being returned from here. So let's say that this is a return type number. So this is identified that number will like this function will return a number. If it is not returning anything, let's say there is a console. Okay, so if there is a console, it is not returning anything. So what the function will be returning? I put the console here. So what should it be returning? It should be returning undefined, right? Okay. So basically, if there is no return type, for example, what we call as void in other languages, we know that if there is no return type or something, so this function is going to be this console log is going to be printing the undefined part. So we can check this part out. Okay, no issues at all. Let me close this one. So we do not need this. All right. So let's inspect this part, and if I check the console, so I can see that this arrow function is printing undefined because what this is what it is written. This console log is doing its job. Okay, this console log is doing its job. Okay, as it is a function call, but the return type is going to be undefined over here. We begin with the this keyword thing. Okay, how this what is this in JavaScript? So for example, we discussed about the global this. Okay, So global this points to, we printed global this. So
Yes. Yes, sir. Window. Global.
yep. So global this points to window. So that is one thing. Okay. Also, we saw the behavior that there is a normal function. This is a function expression. This is a function inside the object, and this is this inside the arrow function. So if you remember, do arrow function have this keyword or not?
What's the
Okay. So we discussed that a function when it creates its execution context when it is running. So we have this keyword inside the function, right?
yes, sir.
So when we printed this, so what it gave us? Okay,
In which function, sir? In arrow function or
normal functions.
in
Okay.
normal function window, sir? Refers to
Uh,
window.
okay. Yep. So that was window. Just okay. So it will be good for a quick discussion. So we are clear on this. All right. Let me paste this. You see that. So this in JSS printing the this in JSS printing the. So this is first of all the 15 number line, the global this. Okay. Function one, function two, function three. Okay. So function one, function two, function three. So So function two, as we see, so it is printing this window itself. Then function three, again it is printing the same thing. Okay, so this is the this was the arrow function, right? So this is the function expression, this is the arrow function, and the normal function which we had was also printing the every function and the global was printing window in case of non-strict mode. What we saw in strict mode,
It more undefined there, except arrow function. The remaining two both are undefined.
yes, correct. So we see that except the arrow function. So I'll just take the example of this one, so you can see that it is going to print undefined, whereas the function 3, which is the arrow function, it is going to be printing the window. So this specifies that arrow function borrows this from its environment, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so there is no this defined over here. Whatever it borrows from outside. Okay, the one thing was very interesting is if we do obj.print this function, and we call this print function. So what this was printing?
Object, sir. That object refers to that.
Right, yeah, go on. Mhm. So this object is being printed. All right. Okay. Now this makes us understand two things. It does not matter where the function is written. It matters how we call the function, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So this is one thing. Now, binding in arrow function. So, okay, first of all, what is binding? We'll see. And before that, we saw that how this behaves. Okay, so we did this thing. There is one thing called apply and bind. Okay, let's just discuss about this one. So, you know that obj dot the sprint method, whatever is this. So, this is pointing to the object. Let me create one more object. So, let obj2, and this is going to create an object, and this, let's say, have some other keys. For example, property 1, property 1. Okay, so this is what we have. Then we have the c with this, basically property. This is property 1, this is property 2, and this is a object. Okay, I made a statement that it doesn't matter where the function is written. Okay, it doesn't matter where the function is written, the whatever. So this depends how we are calling the function. For example, with help of this obj2, okay, with help of this obj2, if I want to call any function, is there a way I can call this a function for function 3 with the help of obj2? Or let's say if I want to call this normal function, for example, a function inside object, I can simply do obj dot print and I can call this function. Okay, now this obj2 is here. So there is one interesting observation. The observation is, if you remember, in Java, everything is inside a class. There is nothing, there's no function, or maybe there's no variables which exist outside the class. Everything is a property or method of class. Whereas when we switch to JavaScript, we can see that I can create this object. Okay, I can create object. I can have variables. I can have functions in the global context. Okay, so this is the global context, right? Okay, let me switch off this use state so that it does not create confusion. Okay. So for example, I want to call this function as a method of this object, so that is also possible. So every function we have over here, it holds some methods. For example, there's a method known as apply. Okay. What this apply method will do is, let's see. So I want to apply obj2 over here. Any guesses what this apply method does? Okay, let's see. So, and do we have something in the function? No, it is a, so this is a normal function and I want to print this. If I call this function directly, this was printing window in non-strict mode, and this was pointing to undefined in strict mode. Okay, now this function one has a method apply, and I am passing a object over here. Let's see what this is going to print. All right, so let's see this. And let me clear the console first. I can see that this is pointing to the object itself. Line number 18. So line number 18 is basically this console function one. This function was not the part of object. Okay, this is not the method of obj2, although we can make it, like, temporarily make it call for that object, which is obj2. So basically function on dot apply dot obj2. Now this will be pointing to the object, which is the function is bind. Is the binding clear? What is happening exactly?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now the same behavior is when this function one belongs to obj2, but here function one does not belong to obj2. So if I want to point this to obj, this will be the thing. Also, not only this, I can print the property also. For example, if there is a property this dot name, and the name is, let's say, obj2, let's say object2. So since this is pointing to the object, it means that this is also pretty much possible. So this dot name access this also. Let's see that part. So function one will print this and this dot name. So which is whatever object we bind it to. So if I hit it, so we can see that this dot name is printing object two, which is basically the name. This is one way. Okay, this is one way to bind a function to object which is not exactly the part of object. Here comes the second part. Suppose that your function is accepting some arguments, for example a comma b. Okay, for example a comma b. Alright, now, so this is fine. Okay, function one dot apply is fine, but what if my function needs something, like some arguments? Okay, some arguments. So where to supply the arguments? Basically, I can pass obj2, and I can pass this argument inside an array. Okay, so bind this function to obj2, and 2 and 3 will be basically the parameters over here. Okay, how this functions? Let's see. So function 2 dot apply, this will be printing to this and a comma b. Let's see this part. So we can see that a and b is printed. Apart from apply, there is one more thing which we can see, that is, if I want to bind a function, I can use this also. Function 2 dot call. Okay, and I can pass the object 2 over here, and I can pass, let's say, 2 comma 3. Now the only difference between these two is, what is the difference, guys? First of all, are they doing the same thing? Let's see. Yes, they are doing the same thing. The only difference is the way we pass the parameter. I am writing the parameters inside an array and I'm passing the array. Here I'm not passing the array, I'm just writing the argument. So this is the only difference between apply and call. There's one last way to do this. Okay, do this binding. Let's see that part. So function to bind it, alright, and I can bind this function to the object, something like, alright. So there's something called as bind, and I can supply the object to over. So this is one thing. Okay. Now this function to bind it can be called like this. Okay, and I can supply the arguments. Let's say to kind of it. So let's see line number this. I will comment this part. Let's use only the bind thing. So I can see that this bind is also now. If it looks like it is doing the same thing, so there is one difference between this bind, call, and apply. Call, apply, and bind has a difference. Can someone tell what is the difference here? What is the difference between apply, call, and bind? Why bind is something different? Bind is basically instead of calling the function directly, if we see bind is returning a function, and I can call that function as many times as possible. I can call the function in future. I do not have to call it now. Where apply and call is calling the function directly. Is the difference clear
Yes,
between?
clear, sir.
Okay. All right. Okay. Hi Vikas. All right. So we are discussing about the bindings of function. This and closer we discussed last time.
Good evening, sir. Actually, my mic is off. That's why I'm not able to speak.
Oh, okay, okay, okay. No issue. So on which topic you are currently?
I am on JavaScript, but due to some medical issue, that's why I'm not continue.
Okay, okay. No issue, no issue. So if you need any help or revision for any topics, okay, please feel free to ask. Right. All right. I'll share the document where I have all the topics. Okay, you can just refer to that.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Yep. All right, so this is something which is needed. Okay, so like how these things work. Now as we are discussing for this, we'll be moving to constructor, class, and inheritance. Okay, and we'll see how classes work here, how constructor work in JavaScript, and that is very very important for creating classes, and that will help you understand when we study React. So React has something concept of class component and function component. So functions and classes both have something similarity. Okay, and it is very important that we know these concepts, classes, constructor, and what are the methods and what are the prototypes. So these things becomes very important as we are going to need it in coming lectures. All right. So, in addition to this, so I hope this brings clarity. And okay, so we discussed about if we let const var and all these things. Okay, so I hope that makes sense. There's something function to create object. Function to create object. Okay, you will get the what I'm calling function to create object. So uh, let me create one more file, constructor.html. Why I'm writing constructor.html? It will be clear why I'm writing constructor.html over here. See this, not section. I mean to say script. Script. Okay, script as well. All right. So guys, first point, what was the need of class? Okay, what was the need of class? And before that, what is the need of object oriented programming language? When we say object oriented programming language, for example Java is there. So the whole idea is that we are creating a template kind of thing. For example, let's say that there is a object. Okay, object, I'm talking about real world object. There's an object, let's say car, and I want to write a program for that. And obviously there are real programs, real software running for cars, as you guys already know that. So how it is done is, and the most preferred languages was till date is Java, okay, for these kind of things. Why we say it object oriented programming language? Because we say that, let's say we consider a class car. Now this car is going to have properties, this car is going to have some methods. Properties can come with, let's say the name is there, the model number is there, let's say the max speed is there, okay, and let's say that whatever the temperatures are there, that any sensors and all those kind of things are there. But we talk about these basic things, okay, that what is the speed currently, or the max speed, and let's say the number of gears are there. So these are the properties of that class car. What are the methods? Methods can be starting the car, stopping the car. Let's say there are some things like lights are working and windows are working, okay. So windows are like, we can put the switch to make the window up and window down. So these kind of things are there. Now these things are exactly mapped as the property or the methods. Similarly, and we create a single class, and for that class, if you remember, we have different type of object, different object like obj1, obj2, which points to that class, and that object is able to access the property and access the data members, right? Just a sec, guys, just a second. Good evening, sir. जी जी जी। सर कल कल जो डेट्स आए थे वो वाले सर। जी जी सर, मैं एक बार फिर से डैशबोर्ड देख लेता हूँ। जी 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 सर, जी सर, जी सर। मैं सर वो वैसे वो 5 डेट के सर कर दिए थे सर, वो सर वो जनवरी 22 के बैच के थे ना सर? वो मैंने वो मैंने कल डाल दिए हैं सर वहाँ पे, आने वाले हैं। जी, जी सर। अगर और जो बाकी हैं सर मैं कर देता हूँ, आज ही कर देता हूँ उसको। ओके सर, थैंक यू सर। Alright guys, okay. Really sorry, had a call. Okay, the point is कि we are going to see something in JavaScript which will help us, so the which will help us create objects which will have some properties and which will have some methods. So both things will be there. So how does this work? Let's see. So and we okay, really sorry, just a second, just a second. जी सर, जी सर, जी सर। अटेंडेंस सर? ओ सर, इस मंथ वाली? जी 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 सर, जी सर, जी जी सर, जी सर, जी सर। मैं दोनों ही कर देता हूँ सर, अभी देख लेता हूँ, लास्ट मंथ और इस मंथ दोनों ही देख लेता हूँ, दोनों ही कर देता हूँ। ओके सर। So basically, it will be a normal function. So for example, let's say function one, there's a function one, okay, and creating object from a function works something like this. Let's say that there's a okay, so we can take example of car, or let's say we take example of a student. So how does this function is? So for example, a student can have its name, a student can have its, let's say, class. Okay, so class is a reserved keyword, right? So let's not use that. Okay, something like this. And maybe the roll number is there. Okay, roll number is there. Right, and get name is a function. Get name is a function. All right, get name is a function. Okay, and this will say the name is something like, the name is, for example, I can. So we just saw that, okay, if we use this object to call this, this can be pretty much used with its properties also. So this will point to its properties. If you remember, this points to the current object, and that current object is able to hit the methods and hit the properties. So we can get that one. Okay, so this is kind of a student object, and every time I try to create an object from this, I can do something like this. So return object. Where do we get this name? Pretty much, basically, this parameter can be used. Pass a parameter and set it. So that is what the good way is. Okay. So I can say const student one is equals to new function one. Okay. Student new function one. Right, and the function can, let's say, take, for example, okay, so let's say that ABC is there, the function name, then maybe the class goes to like 4, and the phone number can go like 5. Okay. I have a close look what we just did. So this is a normal function which we have created. This function is creating an object with the help of the parameters we have passed over here. It is also holding a name. Okay, not new. Why new? New is not new, right? So basically, this is a normal function which is going to return a. All right. Similarly, I can, if you see, you can, this function can be reused any number of times with different object. Okay, so you'll say, sir, that is what functions are responsible for, right? So why do we create a function? So that you can use the logic again and again. Okay, so that is the idea. Basically, we have this student one and student. So let's see what are the properties they hold. Okay, and if our concept is working or not from it. So basically, constructor.html. Now, if I see this is a function which is creating an object, which is having an object, and we are returning the object, and this object is being created by the numbers, the methods I have, or the parameters I have passed. Okay, so these two objects should be there. So basically, student one is one of them, and student two is the other one. So student one is there, and student two is. So you can see that these both of them are holding properties, and these both of them are holding function also. Now, so this student one dot name is accessible. Okay. Student two dot name is also accessible. So whatever this method is returning to us, it is like a function. So this function is kind of function which is, whenever we call this function with certain parameter, it is going to be returning me a good object. So this is what it is. All right. And not only the properties can be accessed, we can access the methods too. Okay, so you can see that. We can access the methods too. Okay. So student one and student two both have methods also, and we can access the methods also. Okay. Okay, all right. So ठीक है basically, so this idea comes from, if you just have a close look, this idea comes from let's say any object oriented programming language. So where you want to create an object, so you do let obj1 is equals to new object, and you pass the things inside it. And whenever you try to create an object, what is called in the class? Whenever you try to create an object, so what is the first thing which is called when we create an object? Constructor is called, right? Okay, so constructor is the first function which is being called when we are going to create a object. So it okay, so there is a class, and constructor is for initializing the properties itself. Okay, so whatever the properties are, so whenever we try to create an object, that is the first method, which is constructor, which is going to be called. Now this function is kind of behaving like a class itself. This function, when it is called with these three parameters, it will create object, and it will throw object or return object. So as many student I want, I can create it, and these student will be having all these features: name, class, roll number, and get name method also. Okay, so one way to do the this is one way to create a function which will be creating objects every time we call that function. So this is one thing. Okay, all right, what's the next point? There's one thing to look at it here. There's one thing we can check it out, that since we already okay, so this dot name is pointing to the property of the same object. Okay, this dot name is nothing different. It is pointing to the name itself, the name property itself. This points to current object, and current object name property is already there. This is one thing. The same thing can be done something like this. See this? So function fun2. Okay, this is fun2, and basically I can create something like this. So name, class, roll number. Okay, so this can be done again. Okay, and we can say that this dot name is equals to name. Okay, this dot class is equals to class. This dot roll number, this dot roll number is equals to roll number. Okay, this dot roll number is equals to roll number, and basically, okay, that is it, no more changes required. I will copy this part, and I will change it to this one. Okay, so just put in 3 students. Let's do the changes. So I will say B, C, A, and so D. Let's have a look at this. What I have written exactly. This function is pretty simple. Okay? This function is pretty simple, creating object, returning it, whatever parameter we passed. Whereas if you have a focus on this one, this is something different. Okay? This function is something different, assigning the property to this. Okay? No object, no return statement. Will this work? Let's see. So okay, let me call function 2, not function 1 again. So function 1 and function 2. So will this work? Obviously put a bracket over it. So let's refresh this file and check it out. So look at this. All right. So student 1 and student 2. This is made by the older method. Okay. What is the older method? So this is student 1 and this is the student 2. So these are pretty much objects. Okay, with data, member, and member function. Whereas student 3 is something new, but it is undefined. Student 4 may be the same thing. So student 4 may be the same thing. This That is something we need to check. So student 1 and 2 are working. There's something missing from student 4 and student 3. Okay, there's something missing over here which is needed. Now, if we just have a closed loop, this function is now it is a normal function, but with some changed properties. For example, we are, instead of creating a new object all over here and returning it, we are using this keyword directly. And we know that the object is created in the heap memory, which is the larger size. And whenever we want to create something inside the heap memory, we use the new keyword. You remember new keyword whenever we are creating an object? Okay. So whenever we want to create an object, we use the new keyword. New signifies that it is C++, Java, JavaScript, any language. It signifies that it is allocating some memory in the heap area. Okay. So when we have to say that use new and create the object. Now, if we just go over here and check this out, then it should be working. Okay. Now, if we check student object, so student tree, so we can see that this is holding the values. Okay. So name, class, and roll number. So function 2. So using the function 2, I have successfully created an object with these properties 4, 5, and DCA. Okay. Okay. So this is student 3. Okay. So there's DCA 4 and 10. So DCA 4 and 10. All right. Now, new object is commanding that, hey, please create an object with these properties. Okay. And this points to the object, right? Guys, remember from Java, this points to the current object, right? All right. Not only this, not only data members, we can have member function also. Member functions is something like get name, okay? Get name, and if I just focus, we can have functions also over here. Okay, so this is a get name function, and this get name function will be returning us, or maybe printing whenever we call it. It should be printing, let's say, this dot name over here. And the name is pointing to this name property. Okay, this name is pointing to the name property. So student 4 and student 3 having this property, it will have the method also. Okay, so how does this work? Let's see. So now if I check student, yes, capital, right? So student, not scheduler, should be student 4, and we now have a method get name, and if we call, we'll get the name of the student. So this is a way we create object which have properties and a function. This kind of function is called, how many of you know what we call this function? We call this a function which initializes data member. Does it sound familiar? Function which initializes data members. How many will say that it is called constructor in class? Remember that, guys. We call it constructor, which initializes the data members. Basically, the point is key. Since we directly do not have a class in JavaScript, okay, so we can follow these approaches for creating separate objects. Okay, so either we create separate objects one by one, otherwise we can create a function which will create objects for us. We call this object as a constructor function, and it has methods. All right, there's one thing which can be optimized here. Okay, which can be optimized here. Let's see that part. Now, if you see, these properties make sense. These properties are different. BCA 45, DCA 45. So, name, class, and roll number for every object created will be different. Okay. Every object created, these things will be different. But there is one thing which will not be different. That is the function. Properties can be different. We are passing the properties. But this get name function, we can see that it is common through the object. Student 4, student 3 are having the same get name function. There is no difference. So does it make sense? Let's say here are only two objects. What if there are 100 objects? So should we have 100 copies of get name function, or like it is not needed, right? If we have a single method and that single method can be used, why to have different copies of the same method doing the same task? So instead of doing something like this, there is a way we can avoid this repetition. Now this repetition can be avoided by, and see that how do we avoid this repetition. So function 2 dot, there's something called as prototype. Okay, there's something called as prototype, and we'll discuss what is this prototype and what it is used for. Instead of assigning method to every object here, I can use this prototype to have some property, or let's say have some methods. For example, see this is a function where we print this dot roll number. Okay, now there is one thing we need to take care, that this prototype I'm assigning this get roll number. Let's see how, if this works or not, if this get roll number is accessible to these method. One thing is for sure, these four properties will always be there. Name is there, class is there, roll number is there, name is there, because these will be there, there's no doubt in this. Will anything else be there? Let's see. So I will quickly do a refresh. Okay, student 4. Okay, student 4. So if I print student 4, I can see only these properties over here. Get name is there, class is there, roll number is there. But I don't see get roll number function here. Although if I just do this, student 4 dot get roll number, I can do the thing. I have this get roll number accessible by student 4. This is totally possible. That is something different which we haven't seen yet. We can see that there's no method inside it. There's no get roll number method. But how student 4 is using this get roll number? That is a question. If I just, okay, see this, if you have carefully noticed, whenever we created function from beginning till now, whatever functions were created, whatever JavaScript functions were created, we have something called as prototype always attached to it. We had a reference for prototype always attached to this one. How this functions? That is a question. The point is, whenever we create a function, whenever a function is created, whenever a function is there, whenever a function is there, the function is there, and we have its prototype also. The function is there and we have the prototype of the function. Prototype is basically an object containing different methods. Prototype is an object containing different methods. So for example, whatever we assigned over here now, that is get on. If my function is returning an object, if my function is returning an object, it will return different object for, it will return different objects. Okay, it will return different objects but prototype will never be different. Prototype is only created once when the function is there. For every function, there is only one prototype. That is why when I assign get roll number to the prototype, it is accessible to every object. Okay? Every object can access the prototype of its constructor function. So constructor function of student 4 is function 2. Constructor function of student 3 is function 2. But the prototype is same. Objects are different, but the prototype is same. So how can we access a prototype from the function? I can say function do dot prototype and I will get the function. So if you see get roll number function is in the prototype. Okay. Also, there are lots of other things inside the prototype. So I can come back from prototype. I can come back from prototype to the constructor function. Okay. So I can come back over here. Something like this. Okay. So I can do this. I can definitely do this. No issues at all. Alright. So there's a two-way from function to prototype and from prototype to function. So prototype dot constructor will return us back to this. Now student 4 is not the constructor function, it is the object, okay, which is made by that function. Now these student 4 have the access to prototype also. How can we access the prototype using an object? We can use this dunder proto. We call it underscore underscore proto underscore underscore. So we call it dunder proto. Okay. Now this dunder proto can point to the prototype of its constructor function. See, there is a difference. The constructor function can access prototype using dot prototype thing, whereas student the object can access the prototype using underscore underscore proto underscore underscore, which is dunder proto. The same with the student 3 also. Okay, student 3 can also do the thing. So student 3 can also do the and this. So this is what prototype in JavaScript. All right. So, okay. So prototype is acting as a common place for all the object, which holds everything inside it. Um, is the prototype logic clear? Are you guys getting the point? Any doubts till now in prototype? All
No, sir.
right. Yeah. Rajat, you want to say something?
So, no doubt, sir. Understood.
Yeah.
So, understood the concept, sir.
Oh,
No
okay.
doubt.
Okay. 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 All right. Okay, so not only this one, okay, not only this one, we can have something like this also. Okay, so not only the member function, you can assign properties also. Properties, for example, you can assign, let's say, the school name, okay, because every student for a school will have same school name, right? So let's say that the school name is DPS. Not only the function, this school name will also be accessible to every object created using function 2. So school name is a new object which is accessible to all the methods, okay, all the objects. The student 3 dot school name. So you can see that school name and student 4 dot school name will be the same thing. So you can just separate this and check it out. So same thing. So these are the things which we are. Okay. The point is, so you can assign property to the prototype. Also, there can be one question. The question can be, sir, this is the direct object. Okay, this is the direct object, right? So can the object property and can the prototype property be of same name? Like can be the name same? For example, this prototype is having a school name. Okay, this prototype is having a school name. Although although every object school name will be DPS, but let's say that Student 4 is saying that, hey, I want to change my school name. I want to change my school name. So I can say that school name is equals to, okay, instead of DPS, let's make it APS. Student 4 dot school name is something different. So will this change the property also? Will this change the prototype also? For example, student 3, the other object, which is student 3 dot school name, will still have DPS, whereas student 4 dot school name is APS. It means that we can have same name of properties in object and its prototype. There is no issues at all. No issues at all. Okay. Now, handling the property or getting the prototype using the object as dot underscore proto, right? So this is what the dot underscore proto is. Although there is one better way to do this. Okay, there is one better way to do this. That is object dot get prototype of prototype of function two. Get prototype of function two. Alright, why am I getting this? So object dot get prototype of, okay. So this requires object, okay. So this requires object. Student four. Student four. Okay. So this is Dunder proto. There's one way to get the object underscore proto. Whereas there is a new way to do the same thing. You can see, you can check it out. These are the same thing. Object dot get prototype of this object. So if you try this method, you will get the prototype of the object. Now this is discarded or discouraged. Okay, we do not use this now. We directly use object dot get prototype of, and we get the prototype. Okay. So this capital O object, it is already, it is the parent of all object. Okay, it is the parent of all object. It is already there. So every object has a base object. Do you remember Java also have a base object? Do you guys remember this part? Java has a base object called obj. There's error object also. Okay, so these are already there. Similarly, JavaScript has capital O object as the base object, and this base object has lots of functionality. So you can see, you can check it out. So capital O object. Okay, so you have this, right? Then it throws an object. So I said that every object will be having the prototype, right? So is this having a prototype? Let's check it out. Yes, this capital object or the predefined object is also having the prototype. And if I open this prototype, I see lots of methods over there. Constructor is there, has own property, is prototype of, to local string value of render proto, and lots of things are there. This is the highest level of prototype. This is the parent of all prototypes. Object dot prototype is parent of all prototype. Every object inside JavaScript access properties from this itself. Every property in JavaScript access the properties from this only. So this is what we have. All right. So let's see what we have already covered till now. So we can see that new keyword binds to new object. Without new keyword, this refer to upper scope. New keyword bind to new keyword binds to new object. Acha, so I have used new keyword to create an object. If you remember, this 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 exists in a function. Whenever a function is created in execution context, this is present. Okay, so this refers to the current object. Okay, and when you use new keyword, it says that create a new object. Okay, new keyword says function to hey, please create a new object with these properties. If you not use this new keyword, it will this will points to this will point to the outer scope. If you remember, this was printing window. Okay, let me show this. So if I do the same thing and I say student 5 and I do not use new keyword, okay, check this out. We have function 2, right? Name, class, roll number, and get name. See this. I will close this. I will do hard reload. Okay. And if I check student 5, student 4, totally fine. Student 5, undefined. Because we didn't use a new keyword. If you don't use a new keyword, this will point to the upper scope. Upper scope is, what is the upper scope of function 2? Upper scope of function 2 is window, right? This is the global scope. Make sense? It means that window should be having name, class, and roll number. Let's check it out. If this points to the outer scope, if you don't use the new keyword, it means that a name should be present in window. Yes, window object is having the names, and get name should also be there. That means, so see this, get name is also there. So that is why we put a new keyword over here, that please create a new object, do not use the outer scope. Is this new keyword thing clear? Why use new keyword?
Yes,
All
sir.
right, all right.
Sir, sir, can you give a demo on how to host a file on Git?
How to host file on Git? We did this last session or not? Okay, okay. Let's do that. Okay, okay. We'll just do that. Uh, have you used Git on system? Installed Git or not yet? Is it?
Yes, sir. Sir, how to host a file on Git? Can we have a demo?
Yeah, yeah. We can have. I was asking, like, have you installed a Git on your machine or not yet?
Not yet, sir.
Okay, okay, okay.
Not yet, not yet.
So Windows, right? You are working on Windows.
Yes, sir, Windows.
All right. Okay. So let me just first show how to, like, or you will install yourself, or should I show?
Sir, you can simply give a demo. I will figure it out. How
All
is it?
right. Okay. 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 Makes sense. So let's see
Yes,
what
sir.
we have done, and probably we'll be continuing this thing is next class. So we have this function to create object. We learned about call, apply, bind. We learned about new keyword, why it is used. When we say that every time two objects are created when we use a function, when create a function, object is there and its prototype is created. We learned about constructor, which returns an object with different data types and member function. We discussed about prototype, share member function, data members, properties, and an object. Objects have access to their prototype. Object dot get prototype of pass the object, you will get the prototype. Otherwise, object dot underscore proto underscore, which is dunder proto. Add property to prototype at runtime. Okay, so we can, okay, so runtime means after the objects are created, I can add properties to runtime also. Okay, after these objects are created, I can then also add this. No error will be giving. It will be given. Okay, so at runtime can also this be done, and these will be available to the function. No issues at all. Similar to static member behavior in another language. If you remember, static members were there, okay, which is binded to class, not to the object. Object dot under proto with this object dot get prototype of he has this has own property. Check this out. Okay, we'll discuss. Object
Sir,
has a function.
I
Yeah.
have also a JavaScript related question.
Mm-hmm.
How we can use SMTP in JavaScript file to connect our form to JavaScript with backend,
Mm-hmm. Okay. SMTP. This is for
which is
mail server, right?
for Office 365.
Office 365. So, okay, all right. Okay. So, would you want to send a mail from JavaScript, right? What I'm
Yes, actually, I
getting.
am working on a project which is
Mm-hmm.
related only just a form submission, and I just use a backend as a database, MySQL,
Mm-hmm.
and I want to just submit form and also get the data on my Office 365 mail.
All right. Okay, let's connect separately on this. Okay. So
Okay,
I
no
okay.
problem.
I'll just we'll discuss about some mail server thing separately. Okay.
Okay, no problems.
All right. You can just ping me. Like I'm added to the group, so just ping me once. Okay. All right.
Okay, okay.
Yeah. Yarjit, so once you are done with the Git installation on Windows, which is basically, I suppose, Git Bash, you can download this Git Bash on your Windows machine. Okay, and just be done with the setup. I will proceed. Okay, so I will proceed with the next topics. The point is, guys, let's say that I want to host any one of this file to GitHub. Let's pick something. For example, this Bootstrap is there. Okay, Bootstrap is there, so it has some things. Let me check something else. Do we have? Okay, let's use this one. So flex.html. I want to host this to GitHub. How do I do it? Let's see. So I will create a firstly create a new folder. Let's say git hosting. Okay, git hosting, and where's the file? Flex. Okay, just copy, drop this. Yeah, I'm moving to this one. Now git hosting. So let's just see this. Once we are done with the git thing, now you can do something like this. So there are some commands you need to remember and you need to run that. So first is git git init. We have initialized the git branch inside this. Okay. So this is the first thing once we are done with the installation of git. Okay. So you need to initialize. You need to create a separate folder which should be sent. Git requires a separate folder. Okay. That is why I'm creating a separate folder and I want to change the name of the file. I will tell why I am changing this name. So this is the new name. Once we're done with this, we need to add the file to Git. This is a very important step. Finally, let's save this thing. So I will commit it. Commit means I'm making the commitment that I'm done with the changes. Okay. So done with changes. Okay. So this is one thing. All right. So once this is done, git initialization, git adding, git add dot, and git commit. So these are the three commands we need to run in the folder. So this is the only thing which we need to do on our machine. Next thing we need to do on our GitHub repository. So if you see this, so I have opened my GitHub repositories. Let's go to creating a new repository, hitting the new button. I will say git hosting. Right. Create a new repository. Just type the repository name and nothing else. Hit create repository. No option needed. Just simply like create the repository. So it says or create a new repository on the command line. No, we do not need to do this. We have already done that. Or push an existing repository from command line. Yes, this is what we need to select. What it will be doing is, as we have seen that on Google Drive we post our files. Similarly on GitHub we need to post our code. Okay? So that posting is considered as push or pull. So downloading is pull and uploading is push. A remote add origin is to add a remote URL to our repository where the file will be present. Just copy this, come to the repository, paste it here, simply paste it, and this part, and we're done. Okay. Now if you just go to the URL again, so you can see that I have the file over here. So this is the part which is for loading the file to GitHub. Now go to settings over here, wherever in your repository, go to pages, select the branch, mostly it is main. If I haven't changed it already, it will be main, and hit save. That's it. And so this is what we have. So if I go to setting, and it mostly takes a minute, not more than that. Okay. So okay, we have already saved it. Okay. So we can see that it may be okay. So it may be loading. So or it may be queued. So you see this green like orange dot. It means that it is still being processed. Once it turns green tick, it is done. Now this index.html is you have to keep the name of the main file as index.html. That is very very important. Okay. So till it is being deployed, let's mark the attendance. All right. Find the sheet. All right. So let's mark the people who are present today. So Vikas is here, Rajat is here, and Durga was also here. Just I guess guys are not here, so let me mark this. All right. This is done. Let me check this part out. So okay, this is done, and so this is done, right? Now once you see a green tick over here, na, it means that that has been deployed. You just scroll, you see environments over here, click on GitHub Pages, view deployment, and you can see that this thing has already deployed. You can check this link out. Okay, so this is how the deployment function. You can see that it is being there. Is it clear? How do we do it?
Yes, sir. Very much clear.
Okay, just try it out. I will share the video link. Okay, I'll share the recording. You can just try it out. Okay.
And I will check on YouTube also.
Yep. Okay.
Um, yes, sir.
All right. All right.
Thank you, sir.